Hello everyone, my name is Riley Patzsch, and the title of my research study is examining the association between exercise modality and mental health among university students. Poor mental health is common among college students. For example, in 2018, the World Health Organization reported that over 30% of first-year university students screen positive for a mental disorder. Therefore, we need to find ways to support their mental health. Engaging in regular physical activity improves mental health, which could be instrumental in supporting college students. In 2018, the Physical Activity Guidelines Advisory Committee identified a need for more research examining the influence of different exercise modes, such as aerobic exercise and resistance training, on mental health. Such information could help optimize physical activity recommendations and would be helpful when considering how to best support college students' psychological health. As such, the purpose of this study was to examine the relationship between mental health and engagement in different types of physical activity, specifically aerobic physical activity and strength training among university students. During the fall of 2019, a representative sample of 5,000 students from Eastern Michigan University were invited to complete the American College Health Association's National College Health Assessment. 757 students completed the survey. Participants self-reported their demographic information and engagement in physical activity, and responded to questions about their psychological health. Specifically, participants self-reported their weekly minutes of moderate and vigorous physical activity, and the number of days of strength training. The responses were used to classify each participant as meeting or not meeting the aerobic physical activity and strength training guidelines, which are defined on the slide. Participants also completed 4 validated questionnaires which assessed different aspects of their psychological health, which were overall psychological well-being, resilience, psychological distress, and loneliness. We used a one-way analysis of variance to examine differences in psychological scores between 4 groups: those who met neither the aerobic or strength training guideline, those who met only the aerobic guideline, those who met only the strength training guideline, and those who met both guidelines. This table displays some descriptive characteristics of the sample. Approximately 1/3 met neither guideline, and another third met both guidelines. Just over 24% met only the aerobic guideline, and just over 10% met the strength training guideline only. This graph shows the average psychological well-being scores for the 4 groups. A higher score is favorable. The group that met neither guideline had a significantly lower score than the other 3 groups. This graph displays the average scores for resiliency, distress, and loneliness. For resiliency, higher scores are favorable. For distress and loneliness, lower scores are favorable. For all 3 variables, those meeting both guidelines reported better scores than the group meeting neither guideline. For resiliency scores, students meeting the aerobic guideline reported better scores than those meeting neither guideline. Our findings indicate that a varied exercise routine, which includes both aerobic activity and strength training, is consistently associated with better psychological health among college students. Meeting only the aerobic guideline was more consistently associated with better psychological health than only meeting the strength training guideline. In considering why, we know that exercise results in neurochemical changes that reduce feelings of depression and anxiety. The neurochemical response to aerobic exercise may be greater than it is for strength training due to the more continuous, less intermittent nature of aerobic exercise. In addition, this difference might be exacerbated among non-athlete populations, such as the individuals in the study, whose strength training is likely to be less intense and slower paced. The strength of our study was the sample size, which allowed us to examine 4 mutually exclusive activity groups. Limitations include the use of self-reported physical activity data, which is less valid than device-measured physical activity. Further research should use an experimental study design to examine changes in psychological well-being following exposure to different modes of physical activity. This would permit conclusions about cause and effect relationships between exercise modalities and mental health to be made. Thank you for listening to my presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions.